Good morning. Welcome to week 3 of our winter break creative challenge. This week, we're going to be creating an icon set. So you decide what that means. Does that mean 2, 3, 4? You decide. So sticking with our winter theme, create an icon set that uses your color palette. Now you can stick with the same color palette you used last week, or you maybe can combine a few, try a new one. It's pick your own adventure time. So get creating icons, and I'm also going to show you some great resources for inspiration and icons when you're in a pinch. Let's get started. So to get started with our icon set, I first wanted to introduce you to a few ways you can find icon inspiration, kind of see what icons are, and maybe use some quickly when you don't have time to really build an icon set. So the first thing I am showing you is Nucleo. This is an app, so it's a program that you download. There are a few parts to this app. First of all, I can have my own icons, but I can also use Nucleo or Google icons. Now, Nucleo is mainly created for web and app prototyping. So this is great to use with XD. It does have limited icons. Now, you can find more if you're willing to purchase them, but like I said, there's a lot of things for free. So you can see a variety of icons here. And again, a lot of them are, I think, web and app type of icons. But one thing I wanted to point out is creating cohesive looks with your icons. So let's look at some of these groupings and talk about how you can create cohesive. So let's look down here, and we're going to look kind of in these briefcases and calendars. So one of the things you want to do when you start building your icons is have a consistent look. So if you just do outlines, do all outlines. Don't combine an outline look with a filled look. That looks strange. If you do a colored look, don't combine a colored icon set with a black and white icon set. So you want to be consistent in that. So as I look at just this selection that we have here, this icon would go well with this, would go well with this, would go well with this. But this does not match because it's an outline. So think about that as you're building your icons. So that's Nucleo. That's the first one I wanted to show you. Now let's hop over to the web. First website I want to point out is the Noun Project. And I'm going to search for winter. And so it's going to pull winter icon sets. So icon sets that were tagged winter. And you can see all the varieties that we have here. So let's go into one. This is interesting. So these icons are licensed. So this one has a Creative Commons, which says you need to, if you use it, you need to give credit to the creator. Here's the creator's name. Or purchase the royalty-free license. So that's how most of the icons work on Noun Project, is that you want to make sure that you're giving credit to the original creator. And always read that licensing before you choose to use something. But I also think these are great sources for what are some icons that I could create and finding some interesting ideas. The next one uses actual Creative Commons search. So if you type in Creative Commons search, I'm going to search for winter, and I'm going to search specifically for things that are licensed that I can modify and adapt. And so it's going to start pulling content. If I'm going to use it commercially, I'm going to pull that. I can search by specific type of license, so you can browse and look for those. And I can change the image type. So if I wanted to look for illustrations, it's going to pull it up. Well, because I've searched for winter, it's not necessarily pulling the kind of theme I want. It's pulling more maps. So that's just something to keep in mind, as you need to kind of hone in your search very specifically. The final search I wanted to show you is Adobe Stock. And so let's go back to the first page of Adobe Stock. So here I can drop down and I can choose free. So Adobe Stock does offer me some free items. Otherwise, Adobe Stock is a subscription model. So I've searched for winter, and again, I can hone in my category. So I want to look for illustrations, and it's going to start pulling illustrations, and I can really decide how I want these to look. So let's look at vectors instead of illustrations. I think they've made a distinction. Yeah, those are more like what we want. So you can see I can now grab some of these and I can pull those into my libraries. So let's go ahead. I'm going to put this one into my library. So I'm just going to click here. So we're just going to click here and save to our library. And let's get it into our Winter Break Creative Challenge library. All right, let's take a look at what else we might have. And so sometimes when I'm looking through these, I also like to look in for what might be some interesting inspiration pieces. Like this holly is something that I find interesting, so I'm going to go ahead and save that to my library. Maybe this cute little penguin. And so I could just find some interesting iconography as like a starting point for what I might want to create. All right, so we've got those saved into our library. So now let's hop over to Illustrator and take a look at things. So I'm going to actually go back to the home page so you can see me kind of set up this document and talk a little bit about creating a new document. So I'm going to create new. And so here's where you have the choice between, basically, are you going to take this to print or are you going to take it to screen? And so those will inform the sizing. So like when I switch to web, it switches to pixels. For my purposes, I'm just going to go ahead and use a basic print size document, but you can dial in specific sizes over here. And if you're like, I don't want to think in points, I want to think in inches, you can think in inches. And then you just hit create. So I have already set up a document and got it started, and even started some designs so you can kind of see where we're going to head with a few things. So I've got my color palette out to the side, and I pulled that from our placemat that we did on week 1 with Capture. So I'm going to create a second artboard where we're going to build today. I'm going to drop down into my artboard tool and just come over here, draw my new artboard, change it to a letter size, and we're off to the races. Now if I want to make life even easier for me, I can grab my color palette, drag it next to this artboard, and here we go. So first of all, let's talk about some of the ideating that you can do for this. So one of the things that I always think about during winter is all the twinkly lights that are everywhere. So I want to kind of reflect that. So I'm thinking about creating a string of holiday lights. So let's do that. Several ways that I could kind of create a curvy string of lights. One of the great tools for this would be the pencil tool. So the pencil tool is buried beneath the shaper tool, and it lets me draw free-form shapes. And so I can just draw in any direction with that. So I'm just going to draw a little bit right up here. And let's say I want to actually pick this up and continue this. I can come over here, pick that up, and continue that line. So that's kind of the neat part about the pencil tool, is you can just pick up and redraw wherever you are. Now right now, there's no stroke on this at all. So I need to just plug in the size I think I might want for that. And I can continue to change this. Now, the default is this uniform shape. One of the things that I like to do when I'm working in Illustrator, and this is kind of a two-step process. First of all, I go over to my Appearance panel, grab my flyout menu, and I uncheck New Art has Basic Appearance. That really means that most of the time when I'm drawing, if I've changed the appearance, I want it to stay changed, as opposed to returning to the default. Kind of dealer choice on what you prefer with that. So now I'm going to switch this from my uniform to a width profile. And if we zoom in, we can see how that has changed the shape. It goes from skinny to thicker. And so that's an interesting tool to kind of play with. I can also experiment with my width tool with this. So I can enhance areas of that. So that's just kind of a fun thing to experiment with when you're creating something as simple as a basic string of lights. So now let's dig into the light part. So when I envision lights, I envision there's always that the mechanical end. Now notice when I'm drawing, it's drawing with that new appearance that we've created. We can always switch back to uniform. That's fine. I'm also going to have it with a fill and no stroke. One of the other things I want to point out to you that might look different between our two versions of Illustrator is a preference I have set up. So I'm going to go into my preferences and selection and anchor display. And so my anchor display is almost to max. I prefer that for viewing. If you kind of like that look, this is where you find that and change that. And that'll stay until you change it back. So now we have our little, the mechanical end. Now let's draw our bulb. So I'm going to click on my shape tools. I'm actually going to pull these out. I'm going to use these so much today that I want to have those out and accessible. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer here because I wanted to show you these guides. So we're going to draw a bulb, and I really want it to be drawn from this point. I want it to align to the center. So I'm going to hover right there, hold my Alt key down, and now I'm drawing from that center point out. If I want to move this shape, I just hold my space bar and I can move it. Get that positioned however I want. And that's kind of the cool thing about Illustrator is all these different things you can do with shape tools to build your basic look. So let's talk a little bit about some of the basic drawing. If I hold Shift, I get a perfect square. Alt from the center out. I can combine those with a Shift Alt. And if I do a little bit of what I call keyboard yoga, as I'm drawing, I can hold my spacebar down and move things. All of those drawing shortcuts are true across the Creative Suite. So now we've got our bulb and we've got the little mechanical part to it. I'm just going to grab my eyedropper and change that color. Now here's where I can just start doing some interesting things to this. So I'm really kind of liking how that shape is looking so far, but it's a little too round. So I'm going to switch to my direct selection tool. I'm going to click on this end point, and what I'm going to do is convert this anchor to a corner. Now to me, that looks more like a bulb. Now, because I don't want to repeat this procedure every time, I'm going to select both of these. I'm going to Alt drag, which gives it a copy. And you know that you're ready to make a copy when you see that black and white double arrow. Now that I have that one, I can go ahead and select new colors. So I'm going to grab my eyedropper and add new colors. So I can come in here and place these along the wire that we selected. And I haven't grouped these yet because I might still want to make changes to them. But you can see I just marquee over them, and then I can move those and rotate those and position them how I want. So to kind of finish off that look, I would just continue along those lines. Now color-wise, I might stick with these two colors, or I might go over to my color guide and add some tints and shades into those. Next, let's work on that tree that you saw. So how do you draw triangles? I'm not saying triangles. Either the polygon or the star tool can be used to draw triangles. So let's do the polygon. So if I do my up and down arrows, you can see I add sides to those shapes. Now if I want a perfectly straight triangle, I'm holding my shift key down and creating that. Now I can just Alt and copy those, Alt and copy those. Now if I accidentally move something and maybe it's not perfectly aligned, that's where my alignment panel comes in. So I'm just going to select all of these and make sure those centers are aligned. So now my tree is all aligned. I'm going to select it, grab my eyedropper, and I want it to be that dark green. Now these are all separate shapes. To make life easy, I can Command G. Now they're separate shapes grouped together. Or if I want to create these all into one shape, I can do that. That's my Shapebuilder tool. So Shapebuilder has 3 different functions built in. If I want these all to be in one shape, I just mouse over all of those areas. I'm just going to Command Z. If I want to take out parts of these shapes, I just Alt. And finally, if I want them to be separate, I just click, 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 click. Now in our case, we want this all to be one shape, so I'm just going to go ahead and mouse over that. Now one of the cool things you can start to think about is how might I want to create some dimension to this? And dimension is created through shading. So there's a couple of different ways that we can create shading. One way is with the knife tool. And so let's say that you just kind of want to create a more organic type of shape. Notice my tree is selected, and I'm just going to take my knife tool and slice across some paths. So what have I done here? I basically cut this little corner out. I can then come in, select that shape, and change that color. So that really works good for organic shapes. One of the trends that you'll see in color is just using almost like in half and half. So that's what I'm going to do with this tree. So I'm going to grab my line tool. I'm going to draw straight down the middle. And I do want this to be a little larger so it does read as a line. It has to be a line. I'm going to select both my line and my tree. I'm going to grab that Shapebuilder tool again. And this time I'm going to click on this side, click on this side, and then I'm going to Alt and subtract the rest of that line. I basically just divided that shape into half. Now I can color each side of it. So we're going to grab that side. Let's make that the light side. Let's find this other side. Grab it. And make it dark green. So now you kind of have a little bit of shading, a little bit more interest to it. Give it some different looks there. So let's talk about how we can use some of those things we pulled from our library. So if you look, these are the objects we pulled from our library. And what I can do is I can just select those and place those into my artwork. So let's say that I wanted to use this as kind of an outline for my shape, and I'm not sure how to make this fun little shape, but I want to try to make that fun little shape. Easy peasy. So I am going to go ahead and, with the appearance of this, I'm going to change my opacity. So you can see it's about 50%. Then I'm going to lock it. Just put a little Command 2 on there. So now I can use this almost as a shaping trace to kind of get to know things. So how can I build that? Well, I can come in with my pencil, and if I just want to try to trace that shape, I can. And people always ask me, Heather, are you using a tablet? Interestingly enough, I don't like using a tablet with Illustrator. And I think it's because when I first learned Illustrator, I didn't own a tablet. And so I used a mouse. And actually, that is my preferred method. Right now, I'm using a trackpad. But I'm old school, y'all. I wasn't fancy enough to have a Wacom tablet when I first started. Now I mainly use my tablet for painting and Photoshop. And to be real honest, since Fresco and everything came to the iPad, I do most of my drawing with my Apple Pencil on my iPad. So just kind of full disclosure there. So I freeformed that shape, so I'm pretty happy with that. And now I can come over, and if I wanted to, color pick one of my own colors, I can color pick my own colors. I can also start experimenting with using the pen tool. So the pen tool, I think, is the most powerful tool that you can begin to learn to work with inside of Illustrator. So what the pen tool does, let's just go over here. I create points and it draws paths. And let's just give that an outline so you can kind of see. Now if I want to curve that, I click and hold and pull a direction handle. You might remember those direction handles because we converted one of those earlier. So those direction handles work by saying, hey, before you come over to this point, come over here toward me. So I can use those to create a shape. And when I was learning the pen tool, I traced road signs. That's simple. It was road signs that I understood. When I drew the Lowenbrow lion, that's when I knew I'd made it. So it's just a matter of practicing. And remember, when you're creating an icon set, you're really creating things with your voice. And so your voice is not anyone else's voice. You get to decide how things look. You just get to decide how your trees are going to live, where they're going to live, and what they're going to look like. And so I'm kind of liking that. So let's go ahead and color pick those. Now, I want to show you a couple of the things that you might be seeing here that you're like, well, how would I create those type of shapes? Especially these like dashed, especially these dotted and maybe those dashed lines. So I'm going to go ahead and unlock by clicking here, so that unlocks. I'm just going to delete that. And so I'm going to pull in here and I'm going to show you how you can create some of those dashed and maybe rounded strokes. So I'm just going to use my line tool, draw a line. And let's make this 8 point. And I'm going to pop into my properties panel and my stroke panel. And so the first thing is rounding. I can round those ends. Let's just zoom into this so you can see this really well. So you can see now my caps are rounded. To dash my line, I'm going to click dash. And if I wanted those to be square, I I could make them square. Now to round these, I want to plug in a specific line. We'll leave that, and then we're going to make a copy of it so you can kind of see the difference. There we go. And so to round this, I'm just going to say I want a round, and maybe I want a 6 and a 6. Whoops. Didn't want to do that. I will need these to be a little bigger here for the gap. And so you can see as I change these values, it's changing how these look. And so you can get kind of your own look for rounded and different types of lines. So hopefully that gives you enough to get kind of started on your icon set, giving you some ideas on how you can use your library as some sources, some basic tools to use. I'm going to keep building my icon set, and I will share those with you in our Slack channel. If you have questions, if you want to do something with your icon set and you're like, Heather, I don't know how to do it, ask that question in the Slack channel and I will get back to you. Okay, happy creating.